Hello, my name is Dan Laustsen. I was a cinematographer on Frankenstein, directed by Guillermo del Toro.
My maker told his tale. And I will tell you mine.
I think he talked to me about the first time when we did Crimson Peak, like for 10 years ago or whatever it was. He wants to do, he was very fascinated about the story and he'd like to do it. And then suddenly one day after Nightmare Alley, he said, I think my next movie is going to be Frankenstein. Then I got the screenplay and it was just like, wow, this is a 100% different story. I was like blowing away right away. And I was not surprised about that because that's the way Guillermo is working. He's changing everything upside down. And I think he's a master director and we have the same approach to light and cameras and camera movement and storytelling. So for me, it was a really dream project. But what Guillermo does normally, before he's starting up the movie, he's doing a kind of mood boards for each scene, like this scene should look a little bit this way and that scene should be a little bit like that. So he does that and that's a really big help for everybody. So that's a really good guideline for the production designer, for the costume designer, for everybody, including the cinematographer myself. In the beginning we thought about we will do exactly the same as I did in Berlin, and some of the set was only lit with candles. But we liked a little bit more direct light, so when you're shooting with candles, the light is running everywhere. So we didn't like that. So we went away from that, but our inspiration was classic paintings. Rembrandt and these kind of classic paintings. The last movie we did, we shot Alexis 65 and we shot LF. And I have a clear idea what I want to shoot 65 and I want to use a full sensor this time because last time the lenses we was using could not cover the sensor. And I'm a big fan of large format filmmaking, like in the old days. In the past we have shot the Steadicam shot, we shot on the LF, but I didn't want to do that this time, so I spoke a lot with James, the Steadicam operator, about that, and he figured out how we could mount that 65 on a Steadicam. So we shot everything on 65. That was super important to stay on the 65 sensor all the way through.
This is a hearing doctor, not a carnival act.
And then I like the Thalia lenses, I've used them before.
Trickery will simply not do trickery.
We shot with a diffusion filter inside the camera because I think the combination between 65 and very high quality lenses is a little bit too sharp sometimes for the skin tones.
Are you sure?
ARRI was making these magnetic filters in the back for us for Frankenstein so we could put them on the Thalia lenses. And I think when you're using a black promist filter inside the camera, that's breaking up the highlights, but keeping the black very beautiful, and we like that. We like single source lighting, we like the black is going into black, but we like the skin tones and the highlights burning out now and then. So that's the reason we have the diffusion filter inside the camera, behind the lens, because I don't want to have like these high quality lenses where I'm just getting a filter flare. I want to have a lens flare. I think the lenses are performing very nicely on, for example, T4. So I'm shooting the whole movie on T4, like inside and outside. Large format and like a Thalia lenses, the depth of field or lack of depth of field, it's really, really beautiful on T4. So of course, when you're in studio, you can just pump up the lights to your T4. And we did that all the time. But when we get outside, we just put an ND filter. But we have a combination. Because we didn't want to have two filters, we want to have one filter, the combination between the black promist and what kind of ND filter we need. So ARRI was making that for us. We want to shoot into the sun, we want to shoot into the light a lot. So there was no discussion for me to have a filter in front of the glass. I want to have it inside, behind the lens. We shot the whole movie with a crane or a Steadicam. The camera movement is very much Guillermo's. The way he's designing the shot is very specific. A lot of times we start behind the actor on a crane or a Steadicam and come into the scene and turn around into a close-up. He's always make the compositions and the camera moves together with me and of course the grips and the camera operator. And I think we shot 80, maybe 90% of the whole movie on the widest lens Thalia have that time, that was a 24. So we shot super wide angle all the time. The beauty of that is because you're shooting large format, so a 24mm is actually super wide angle, but because it's a 24mm lens, it doesn't look wide angle when you're coming close to an actor. So that works really, really well. And of course that's a big challenge as a cinematographer because you have to have all the lights outside the set, because you're coming in and turning around. So we more or less never have lights inside the set.
I had a vision. An idea took shape in my mind.
The color palette is so just specific, so we don't want to change the color palette later on. So when we're shooting our dailies, it's going to look exactly like the final movie. We're not changing any colors in the DI because then we will change the makeup, the hair, or the costumes as well. So we have a very specific color palette. In the DI, we are, of course, doing it more contrast and more beautiful and power windows and stuff like that. But we're not changing the color palette. We are a big fan of shooting everything for real. That's the reason we are building. You know, we want to do all the effects as much as we can, of course, but there's a lot of visual effects, and that's Dennis, the production, the visual effects supervisor, is taking care of that. But we built the ship on a parking lot in Toronto, and that's, of course, a lot of CG there later on. You know, the ship was on a gimbal. The special effects guy did an amazing job. This gigantic ship, just put that on a gimbal so it could go from one side to another. It's like really powerful. So that was like Steadicam and again cranes on the ship. So you feel you're not attached to the ship. And then we shot some of the shots on the ice. We shot that on the ice lake in North Canada in the middle of the winter. Pretty cold. Yeah, of course, when the creature is coming to life, that's a big lighting setup, a big lighting rig, and Desiree, and there was a Dimmerboard operator, and Mike Hall, you know, my guy, did an amazing job. But a lot of like visual effects and special effects there when the creature's coming alive. A lot of lightning, a lot of rain, a lot of steam. It's just very powerful scene, I think. Everything in the studio is practical, with the old-fashioned 100K lighting strikes.
Seeking life.
And again, I love the big sensor. That is, for me, it's like, for me, it's everything. I think that's a big difference between the 65 and everything else, because the big sensor is giving so much life to the actors. Because you can just feel when you're in there, and when we're shooting wide angles all the time, we are close to the actors all the time, and it works so well, I think.